Hello, it's Randi Rhodes. Here's a clip from our show, and go to randirhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.
Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
Yeah, but I can't see anything. So, who wants Al Franken to resign? Thank you very much. Who wants Al Franken to resign? Because he probably will tomorrow. I think this is his last day. This is his last day as a U.S. Senator, don't you? I do. I think this is it. I think 30 senators. I mean, when your colleagues like that, all gang up and say, okay, we've had it. We're done. Enough is enough. There's too much. And they're trying to clean up the Senate, obviously. They're trying to clean up the House, although Blake Farenthold is still there. I mean, there's so many of these, gropers and predators and super predators and, honey drippers or whatever you want to call those Southern charmers like the Roy. And then you got Bannon out there campaigning for Roy Moore to become a senator. So it seems to me that especially the women in Congress, the staffers, the aides, the chiefs of staff, the women who work in Congress have had it with this, this barrage of gradations of being violated, in various ways, shapes, and forms. And they want to have a zero tolerance policy, meaning no full frontal kissing. Do you know what I mean? No, nothing. Because I think that they understand that Roy Moore is coming their way. And they want clean hands. They want to be able to say, we cleaned up our crap, and you people haven't cleaned up any of your crap, and this is just vile, and this is disgusting. And it's so amazing. And the President of the United States as well. You know that Summer Zervos, who was on The Apprentice and had a business of her own, actually was groped by Donald Trump, and she came out with the other 16 women and gave a statement, went on the TV. Maybe I should start there, play you what she said happened.
He then grabbed my shoulder and began kissing me again very aggressively and placed his hand on my breast. I pulled back and walked to another part of the room. He then walked up, grabbed my hand, and walked me into the bedroom. I walked out. He then turned me around and said, let's lay down and watch some telly.
Ew.
He put me in an embrace, and I tried to push him away. I pushed his chest to put space between us, and I said, come on, man, get real. He repeated my words back to me, get real, as he began thrusting his genitals.
God,
he tried to kiss me again with my hand still on his chest, and I said, dude, you're tripping right now. Attempting to make it clear, I was not interested.
Oh, that's so vile. Oh, telly. Let's get real. Oh. See, we've been violated by having to picture the Donald mounting anything, really, anything at all, let alone a gorgeous girl like that. It's so. Trump went on the TV and he called every single one of these women liars and said he would sue them. Well, of course, he's never sued them because he doesn't have a case, because he is properly in a lawsuit the defendant, not the plaintiff. The only thing that may have been damaged by all these women saying no to him might be his fragile ego. But nothing else. I mean, his ability to make a living, his reputation, emotionally, he's not suffering from, guilt or damages, of an emotional, nothing. So Gloria Allred went ahead and decided to bring a defamation case against Donald Trump, because Donald Trump had the world's largest microphone when he called these women liars repeatedly at rallies and on television and in interviews and in God knows every place he could, tweeting about them, just an endless barrage of calling them liars. Summer Zervos decided that he was defaming her, and she decided she had enough to bring a case for defamation, that her business had suffered ever since this Apprentice episode that she was, she appeared on the Apprentice. This is when this happened, that everything about her suffered, that she was called a liar publicly. She was damaged emotionally by all of this, by being called out like that in public, and it is devastating. I got to say, I remember when I used to be talked about on the TV. It's so hard to take. I can't tell you that unless you sign up for this, unless you actually sign up for it and you expect it and you know it, it still catches you off guard because you never know what day. And, like waking up one morning and hearing Fox News call for me to be fired was just insane. Insane, I tell you, because I had done stand-up comedy in a comedy club in San Francisco on a Saturday night, and somebody with a cell phone, submitted grainy video so that you could hear me saying the F word, which back then was like, and I was calling politicians in general effing whores because we were on this thing about how Elliot Spitzer had paid $4,000 for a hooker. Remember? And it was all about this stuff. So Elliot Spitzer had paid $4,000 for a hooker. And I said, how gorgeous do you have to be to get $4,000 an hour? I said, do you have to come with your own sunset? Whoa, that was the joke, okay? And then I downshifted into, and Hillary Clinton's an effing whore because, and it was all because back then in 2008, she was saying that the pledged delegates, it's a familiar argument now that the election was, all about delegates, right? That the pledged delegates weren't really pledged for Obama and that she could peel them off. And that just drove me insane. So that was the stand-up I did. So now I wake up one morning and they're talking about me on Fox News and they're saying, she needs to be fired. That foul-mouthed old girl, she needs to be fired. And I was like, what the? It's very shocking. So I can't imagine being a civilian. I really can't. And having those kinds of conversations about your character with no microphone that you could reply to what was being said available to you. That for me would be pure hell. And that's what Summer Zervos went through. So Gloria Allred filed a lawsuit, and she filed it in New York State because that's where Donald Trump lives. Now, Donald Trump had his day in court through his lawyers yesterday. And Gloria Allred was on CNN last night reporting out what took place in the courtroom. I want you to remember that Alan Dershowitz has been making the rounds, saying that Donald Trump cannot, by definition, commit obstruction of justice, which is ridiculous. So you're telling me that the president could destroy all documents, all papers, all files that implicate him in a crime because those files, those documents belong to the executive branch? I mean, this makes no sense. Of course the president could be charged with obstruction. Hence, Bill Clinton was charged with obstruction. Richard Nixon had articles of impeachment drafted against him, charging obstruction. So it makes no sense. And now they've taken the argument even further. And I'll tell you why. They cannot say that Donald Trump didn't do these things. They cannot say that Donald Trump didn't fire James Comey. They can't say that Donald Trump didn't tell Lester Holt that the reason he fired James Comey was over this Russia thing. They can't say that Donald Trump's voice was not, Donald Trump's voice on the Access Hollywood tape was obviously Donald Trump's voice. It was a bus full of people that heard him because it takes a producer and it takes an audio guy and it takes a boom operator and it takes a bus driver and it takes a field producer. And it's like there's probably like 15, 20 people on that bus with Billy Bush and Donald Trump. So everybody heard him. I mean, there's just no way, right? So now they're arguing through his lawyers in court with Gloria Allred that not only can't the president be charged with obstruction of justice, hence he's above the law, but also that he can't be sued in civil court for things he did when he wasn't president of the United States. Now, official acts while he is president of the United States, that's a different set of criteria. But for things he did before he was president of the United States, just like Bill Clinton and Paula Jones. Paula Jones, in 1994, she was a state employee, and she filed a sexual harassment suit against Bill Clinton and a police officer, a former state Arkansas trooper named Danny Ferguson. She claimed that in 1991, when Bill Clinton was not president, he was governor of Arkansas, that he propositioned her to be his mistress. That was Paula Jones' claim. And according to the story, this trooper had accompanied Paula Jones to Clinton's hotel room, and that the trooper stood guard, and the trooper testified that he overheard Jones say that she would not mind being Clinton's mistress. That case was filed in state court in Arkansas. It was filed in the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Arkansas. Okay? Just so you can recall, or maybe you weren't alive, or maybe you weren't politically active then. So Gloria Allred was told yesterday in court, this is what they presented to the judge in the New York State Court, that Bill Clinton, that Donald Trump, he's immune from civil lawsuits, and he's way too busy. He's so busy that he can't be sued. He wouldn't have the time for the interrogatories. He wouldn't have time for the deposition. He wouldn't have time for his testimony. He's just so busy. This is amazing.
Her reputation matters. Truth matters. Accountability matters. And so we are pursuing this lawsuit for her because she has, in fact, been harmed. She's been harmed by threats. By a loss of some of her business. Emotionally, she has been harmed. But again, her reputation matters. So we were in court today. The President Trump, through his lawyers, argued that he cannot be sued, that he's president of the United States, that he has immunity. He can't be sued in state court. We, of course, argued Jones versus Clinton.
Hello.
That, in fact, when Paula Jones sued President Clinton, and President Clinton said that he was immune from a lawsuit, the United States Supreme Court said no man is above the law, including the President of the United States, for unofficial acts. And we allege that defamation, which is a tort, we allege that if we can prove that was an act that he committed prior to becoming president, and that he can be sued for that. Of course, we would be entitled to engage in discovery. Deposition would be part of that in any normal lawsuit. But I would like to say that one of the arguments that President Trump's lawyers made today is essentially he's too busy. But we said that we're willing to accommodate the president's schedule. In other words, we understand that he's busy, but in the event, for example, that we needed to take his deposition, we'd be happy to take it at Mar-a-Lago between his rounds of golf. Because we want to accommodate his schedule.
Yeah, in between rounds of golf. He's so busy, everybody. He's so busy. And, of course, he thinks he has immunity for acts that he committed prior to being the president of the United States. What world does this man live in? Truly, this is they're suing him for in a defamation lawsuit for the stuff he said before he was president, to damage these women, to damage their reputations, their veracity of their truth, to damage the idea of them in his voters' minds, to make them small, little, insignificant, liars, cheats, doing it for money, putting false motives, assigning false motives to them, ruining their businesses, ruining their reputations. And so, yes, that is a perfect description of damages for a defamation lawsuit. So, yes, it did not happen when he was president. It is not an official act. So, yes, you bring it. And you can bring it in state court, just like, Paula Jones brought it in state court. She brought it in the U.S. District Court in Arkansas. So Gloria Allred brought it in. They call New York Supreme Court. They call it Supreme Court, but really it's a circuit court. I don't know why. New York is always so fancy. So fancy. Because I've been in Supreme Court testifying, and it's really the district court. But okay, so she brings, and their answer to the judge, who's a woman, by the way, is they're too busy to answer questions, and he's immune? You know, when Gloria Allred referred to the Supreme Court ruling in Jones v. Clinton, you know what the count was, the head count? 9-0. 9-0, the Supreme Court said. What, are you kidding me? What do you think? Everything he did before he was president is now, forgivable, or it's not to be looked at, or it has no relevance to, this court? No, when he's president, he has different standards, applied to him. For instance, you can't haul him into a criminal court if it was for, an official act, but you can impeach him. That's the proper venue. So I got to tell you, the more that they make these phony arguments about the president's immune or the president can't commit obstruction or the more I realize they're not making the argument that he's innocent anymore because they can't. So they're making an argument that says you can't hold him accountable. And that's pretty scary because he's not a king, you know. He's not a dictator. He's not an autocrat. He's not a demagogue. He's a president who answers to the Constitution, which clearly was interpreted by the Supreme Court 9-0 to mean that unofficial acts, things he did before he was president, can definitely be heard in a state court. Definitely. Oh, this is going to be some ruling. I can't wait.
Go to RandiRhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.